Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from DailyRacingForm, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hi everybody, Mike Beer here with a look at the second of two stakes races going long on the turf on Saturday afternoon at Gulfstream Park. Race number 9 is the H. Allen Jerkens. They're going to go 2 miles for a $100,000 purse in the H. Allen Jerkens. We got a full gate of horses entered to try out this very demanding distance, and there are a couple of AEs as well. Number 13, as you see on the entry card there, Basso. Number 14, 6-. They're also eligible, hoping for some scratches to get in. 12 entered, though, a full gate here for the H. Allen Jerkens. It's a big field. There's, you know, I don't want to waste a lot of time here trying to get through all of these horses. So let's go right into the handicapping. The Timeform US Pace Projector is one that I don't think you want to put too much stock in. We'll see how the early running plays out in here, but you see from the pace projector there, they have the number 4 Sol Volante up there with the leaders at the pace call. Sol Volante is a dead one-run closer throughout most of his career. His most recent starts have come on different surfaces, and they're faster-paced races, and that all factors in. I doubt he's going to be part of the pace in here. Certainly the number 8, Time for Trouble, could be forward. I thought the number 2, Ocean's Map, would probably be forward in the early part of this race. Trainer Mike Maker, it's worth noting, has 3 horses in here. He could certainly send 1 or 2 of those horses forward and be part of the pace in this race. Even the number 12, Agitare, is a horse who, based on his only start stateside anyway, could certainly be forward. He was very headstrong. That was a 2-mile race as well, and he wound up winning that race, but he was very headstrong early. Didn't seem like he was too kind to settle in that race, so maybe he goes from the outside. I don't know. We'll see about the pace. More than anything else, this race is about the distance. When you're talking about 2-mile races, you're not really talking about who the best horse is. You're really talking about who's the best horse or who can get the 2 miles the best, because that's what it really all comes down to. Maybe that horse will be the number 1, Please Call Me Back, who spent all this year so far, his 5-year-old campaign for trainer Carribrion over jumps, and he's won 2 of those races. The distance is no problem for him. He's also got some flat form that we could deal with here, because he was a pretty good flat horse for trainer Roger Atfield before Brion took over. Here's his most recent start on the flats. We're going back to last October at Woodbine, 1 3/4 miles, starter allowance, optional claimer here. More than anything else, really took advantage of a great setup here. The early leader went way too fast, opened up a big lead and set it up for the closers. And Please Call Me Back's going to sweep around these horses around the final turn, take over, and go on with it. It's a little bit of a rare win for this horse. He had settled for second quite often leading up to this. 10 of his prior 27 career starts, he had settled for second. This is his 4th career win, though. He did take advantage to get the job done. He's going to need a little help, I think, to win this kind of a race, but he's one of the horses in here where you don't have to worry about the 2-mile distance. Ocean's Map is the 2. He should be forward in here. He's a horse who, he's run well over a distance before. Obviously, he's never been 2 miles, but he's a stakes winner going 1.5 miles. So maybe that comes into play here. His 2 starts back on his card. He also went 1.5 miles in a stakes race. We'll look at the replay of that right now. The Precious Passion at Monmouth. He runs fine in here. Had to concede the lead to another horse early, but did so pretty handily. Got a really good trip in this race. Makes a run in tandem with the eventual winner, L'Imperator, and it's just second best to L'Imperator, who, on his best day, L'Imperator is a pretty good horse. And Ocean's Map for second race I was referencing before with Agitare, 2 miles at Far Hills. This horse was terrible in there. Didn't do any real running at all. But that's a sort of a different kind of a turf course. They don't use a starting gate there. They use the flag to start. This horse was carrying 148 pounds. I guess you could excuse him for that one. He's certainly a contender in here. Another mystery is another contender, the number 3. Let's take a look at his most recent start. This is the Pizza Man Stakes, Illinois bred stake at Hawthorne, going 1 1/16 miles, yielding turf. No excuse here for another mystery who, all in all, got the right kind of trip. You saw him squeeze through between horses there in the stretch. Gets out-finished at the end, though, as the 1-2 favorite. No real excuse. He ran fine. His prior start, I thought, was a good one, going 1.5 miles at Kentucky Downs. A very close third that day behind Red Knight and Gufo. So a pretty good performance there with a 97 buyer. He's got the races to contend in here. We'll see what kind of price he is. Irad Ortiz rode him in that Good Effort 2-back. Irad Ortiz back aboard on Saturday. Sol Volante, again, don't think he's going to be part of the pace in here. Do think they're going to sort of take him back and make one run. I thought he was one of the few horses in here who could get overlooked a little bit in the wagering. Maybe his form's dirtied up a little bit with all the surface switches in his most recent 4 starts since the layoff. I thought he's just run some good races in the past, and he's a horse who hasn't won a race in quite a while. But they ran him in some stakes races going a mile and a half, some graded races going a mile and a half last winter and then into the spring. And I thought he ran maybe better than it looks in some of those races that didn't set up that grade for him. And that's the real problem with Sol Volante. He's sort of a one-run closer, so he needs pace and trip help, and he doesn't always get it. Maybe that's mitigated somewhat by the 2-mile distance. I don't know if he's going to want to go that far, but I do think he's one of the horses in here who could be a price, and I wanted to use him somewhere. Ready for the Lady is up next. Very lightly raced 3-year-old for trainer Roger Atfield, who's going to ship this horse down. 2 most recent starts were on the all-weather, and he didn't necessarily run up to his best in those races, but 3 and 4 starts back are the 2 most recent turf starts. They're both wins for this horse. A maiden one going a mile and a quarter. The grade 3 Singspiel going a mile and 3/8. 91 Beyer winning that Singspiel from off the pace. This horse has plenty of upside. Who knows about the distance with him, but he's out for a very, very good trainer who is, going to give him a chance to go 2 miles in here, and I wouldn't take this horse's chances too lightly. He's got to improve probably to win, but I don't see why that would be out of the question. Reigning Spirit is one of the horses who I guess could take some money in here. I'm personally not a big fan, and so, I didn't really want to spend a lot of time talking about him. He's another horse who wants to make sort of one run from out of it. He did win 2 starts back going a mile and a half. I just got up by a nose. I've seen this horse in New York a couple of times, though. I didn't really care for that Saratoga allowance optional claiming start back in August. I thought he got a great trip in that race, had no real excuse not to really get the job done there, not even really come close, actually. And then they brought him back to New York for the Red Smith last time, and he just did no running. I don't think he's necessarily hard to make a case for. I'm just not a big fan, and I felt like he has the running lines to probably take at least a little money in here, and I just wouldn't be interested unless he was some kind of really big price. Wicked Fast is up next, one of the first of 3 for Mike Maker in here. Maker claimed this horse for $35,000. He's run him in 3 stakes races since then. He hasn't been all that effective, but listen, maybe those were just the wrong starts. Maker did stretch him all the way out. We've seen this from Maker before, right? He claims the horse, he steps him up into a tougher race, and he stretches him all the way out in distance, and he has success doing it. It hasn't worked for this horse. He ran him in the Jockey Club Derby Invitational in September. He was just no factor behind Nation's Pride, and he hasn't really gone forward in his 2 starts since then. I don't know. Maybe this is the right kind of spot for this horse, but I didn't really see it with him. Time for Trouble is up next. This is a horse who, if nothing else, just brings really good form into the race. I guess you could say that about him. He was claimed for $8,000 last June, and he's 5 for 8 for the new connections. He's 1 on turf. He's 1 on dirt. So he's a very versatile kind of horse. It feels like he could fall into the right kind of trip here. Who knows if he's going to get the 2 miles. Here's his most recent turf start. This is 3 starts back at Belterra Park. He's a heavy odds-on favorite here. He sits an absolute perfect trip in this race, and you see him get the job done there. I wasn't blown away by this performance. I actually felt like he worked maybe a little bit too hard to get the job done, but maybe they were just saving something. His form has held up since then. Just earned a new career top buyer in his most recent start on dirt. But he's run well on turf too, and he's run pretty well going a mile and a half. So we'll see about the distance. I didn't love him in here, but he's going to be a price, and he could get a good trip in here. Number 9 is Canenos. Another horse for the second horse for Maker in here. I think Maker's done some moving this horse back and forth from distances. He goes longer with them, he goes shorter with them. I feel like this horse handles both equally well. He did go 2 miles with them last year in the Belmont Gold Cup, and this horse ran sort of an even 4th in that race. He was never a threat to win it. That was a much tougher field than this one, though, and it's not like it was a terrible performance. We're going to look at the most recent start from Canenos. This is on a cutback and a little bit of a layoff at Aqueduct, going a mile and 16. He runs pretty well in this race. You can see Jose Lescano in the upper stretch there was trying to get this horse out into the clear. Couldn't get there. Too many horses stacked up outside, so he had to sort of stay in and then edge his way out and split horses late. I thought he finished well once he finally saw some daylight. That was a good performance. Maybe Canenos can build off of it now. 2 starts back when they went a mile and a half. A pretty dismal looking line at Saratoga. I thought he got a terrible trip and ride from Leparoux that day, so I'm willing to give him a pass for that one. I think he can rebound here. Luis Saez takes them out. I think he's interesting at what should be a fair price. The third of the Maker horses is the number 10, Value Engineering. I don't really know what to say about him. He's a horse who felt like he had a little bit of potential early on. He was a Chad Brown-Klarovich horse early in his career. Felt like he had some potential, never really delivered on it. There were a lot of layoffs with this horse, particularly early on. It seems like maybe he's over some of those issues, but he still never really panned out and delivered on any of that potential. Certainly, has the pedigree to handle longer distances. He's run a good race or two along the way. I don't think he's a horse that you want to take too lightly in here. He's just not the kind of horse that you necessarily want to take at any kind of a short price, and he could get bet in this race. But Maker takes over and stretches him all the way out in distance, and sometimes that's a really, really good sign. Value Engineering, certainly a player in this race. I just didn't necessarily want to bet him unless he gets lost in the wagering. Barberini is up next here. He's number 11. And another very lightly raced 3-year-old for a really good trainer in Arnaud Delacour. He's won 3 in a row, including this race right here, which we'll look at, a 9-furlong allowance race at Laurel. And he wins very easily. Again, this is a horse who's just getting better with every single start for a really good trainer. He's another horse who has a little bit of distance in his pedigree too. And Delacour is going to step him right up into a stakes race and stretch him out to 2 miles. And we'll see if it works. He's a horse who is progressing very nicely, and he's got to improve again if he's going to win the 8 Allen Jerkens. The 12 is Agitare. I think he's interested in here. I sort of already talked about that John Forbes Memorial in his most recent start. 2 miles, first start stateside. Very rank and headstrong, refusing to settle early. His rider finally just had to let him pull his way up to contention. This horse did the rest. Even after doing so much pulling and fighting with his rider, he still kicked on very gamely to get clear of that field through the stretch of the race. I thought he ran, really, really well in there. And I don't think, this is necessarily the wrong spot for Carabrion to run him back in. It's a tougher race for sure, although there were some pretty good horses in that John Forbes Memorial. 3rd place finisher cross border. Most people are familiar with him. He's had a pretty good career going long on the turf for trainer Mike Maker. So the distance is no issue for this horse. He doesn't have a great post. He's going to have to, be a lot more settled early in the early running this time. But this horse I thought ran legitimately well, winning that most recent start. I'm going to use him. We'll put the picks up there now, though. I'm going to use Agitare. Ultimately, I just decided, as far as making a pick goes and as far as betting the race goes, I thought Cananos was the kind of horse who could get lost in the wagering a little bit here. And I do think he's a pretty nice fit in here. Is he going to get the 2 miles? I don't know. Maybe it's going to wind up being too far for him. But that's not only a question for him. It's a question for just about everybody else, too. I like Cananos in here. He's the horse I want to bet. Mostly 9-12 for me in Saturday's featured race down at Gulfstream Park. Race number 9. It's the 8 Allen Jerkens, 2 miles on the turf.